She had just buried her father on a Tuesday, and by Thursday, she was standing in the lobby of the most expensive hotel in Halifax, holding a sealed envelope from his estate lawyer that she hadn't opened yet. That detail matters. Remember it. Her name was Celestine Beaumont Okafor. She was 51 years old, wore her hair natural and close-cropped, and had driven 4 hours from Truro in a car that needed new wiper blades. She was dressed the way she always dressed for practical things. Dark jeans, a good wool coat, flat boots. Nothing flashy. Her father had raised her not to perform wealth, but to understand it. He used to say, "The people who need to show you what they have don't have enough of it." She walked through the revolving doors of the Aldermere Grand just past 2 in the afternoon. The Aldermere Grand was not just a hotel. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, it was an institution. 12 floors of limestone and glass, overlooking the harbor. A rooftop dining room with a 2-month wait list. A private membership lounge on the 11th floor that required either a personal invitation or a letter of recommendation from an existing member. The kind of place where old money in Canada went to feel comfortable. Where new money went to feel legitimate. And where people like Celestine, a black woman in practical boots carrying a manila envelope, were not expected to arrive alone and unannounced. She crossed the lobby toward the front desk. The marble floor reflected the chandelier light in long gold ribbons. A bellhop near the entrance glanced at her, then glanced away. A woman in a pale blazer at the concierge stand watched her walk by without offering to help. Celestine didn't notice, or if she did, she'd spent enough of her life deciding not to catalog every slight. She went to the front desk and waited. A young man with a name tag that said Brendan was typing something at his computer. He finished whatever he was doing, then looked up. "Checking in," he said, and even those 2 words carried something in them. Not quite a question, more like a test. "No," Celestine said. "I have a meeting in the Founders Lounge, 11th floor." Brendan's expression shifted, not dramatically. Just the small recalibration that happens when an assumption gets complicated. "The Founders Lounge," he repeated. "That's right. Do you have a membership card, or—" "I have an appointment," she said, "with Gordon Fetz. He's your general manager. You can call up if you'd like." Brendan looked at her for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he picked up the phone. If you've ever walked into a room and felt the air change around you, not because of anything anyone said, just because of how they looked at you, then you already know exactly what Celestine was standing in the middle of right now. Brendan spoke quietly into the phone. Celestine couldn't hear what he said. She stood with her coat buttoned and her envelope under one arm, and she waited, the way she had learned to wait, without apology, without explanation, without shrinking herself to make anyone else more comfortable. After a moment, Brendan set the phone down. "Mr. Fetz is unavailable at the moment," he said, "but I can connect you with our guest services coordinator." "Is Mr. Fetz in the building?" Celestine asked. "I'm not able to confirm." "Then please try his direct line," she said. "Tell him Celestine Beaumont Okafor is here. Tell him it's regarding the Pemberton estate." Something moved across Brendan's face. The word estate had done something. Or maybe it was the hyphenated name. He typed something into his computer, then looked back up at her. "Could I ask the nature of your visit?" "You could," Celestine said, "but it would be faster to just call him." There is a particular kind of patience that comes from being underestimated your entire life. It doesn't look like patience to the people on the other side of it. It looks like confidence. Sometimes it looks like arrogance. It makes people uncomfortable because they can't figure out what you're so sure about. Brendan made a second call, this one shorter. When he hung up, his posture had changed by about 3 degrees. "Someone from the 11th floor will be right down," he said. Celestine thanked him and stepped to the side to wait. She set the envelope on the marble ledge of the front desk and looked out at the lobby. A family with 2 teenagers was checking in at the next window. A man in a suit was reading something on his phone near the luggage storage. A woman in a red coat was talking to the concierge stand now, and the woman in the pale blazer was suddenly very attentive. The elevator opened, and a woman came across the lobby toward Celestine. She was in her mid-40s, blonde, in a charcoal skirt suit, with the kind of brisk, efficient walk that communicates importance in institutional settings. Her name tag said Diane Coulter, Guest Relations Manager. She stopped in front of Celestine and smiled with exactly the warmth of a thermostat set to 68. Mrs. Beaumont, she said, dropping the second half of the name entirely. Beaumont Okafor, Celestine said. Of course. I'm Diane Coulter, Guest Relations. I understand you're here to see Gordon? Mr. Fetz, yes. He's in meetings this afternoon, unfortunately. I'd be happy to assist you with whatever you need. What I need, Celestine said, is to speak to the general manager. I was referred to him specifically by the office of Hartley Reese, the estate attorney. I've driven from Truro and I have time-sensitive documents that need to be reviewed in person. Diane's smile stayed in place, but her eyes were doing something else. Measuring, calculating, deciding. She glanced down at the envelope on the ledge. Then back at Celestine. I'm sure we can find a way to accommodate you, she said, in the tone people use when they mean the opposite. Our guest services suite on the second floor is very comfortable. I can arrange for someone from our administrative team to review any documents you have and forward them appropriately. I wasn't directed to your administrative team, Celestine said. I was directed to Gordon Fetz. He really is quite busy today. Then I'll wait, Celestine said, and she picked up her envelope and walked to one of the lobby chairs and sat down. Diane stood for a moment where she'd been left. Then she turned and walked back to the elevator with the same brisk posture. Except now, something in it looked less like importance and more like irritation. Celestine crossed one ankle over the other and looked out at the harbor through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The water was that specific shade of gray-green that Halifax harbor turns in November, and the sky above it was low and white. She had grown up looking at that harbor. So had her father. So had his father before him. She had been sitting for about 12 minutes when Diane came back. She was not alone this time. Beside her was a taller man in a dark jacket, not a suit jacket, more of a security blazer, whose name tag Celestine couldn't read from where she was sitting, but whose purpose was entirely legible. Celestine did not stand up when they approached. Mrs. Beaumont, Diane said again. Celestine looked at her without correcting the name this time. She had decided to let that one go. I appreciate your patience, Diane said, but I've spoken with our management team, and I'm afraid we can't accommodate walk-in requests for executive meetings without a scheduled appointment. The Founders Lounge in particular has very specific access protocols. I understand protocols, Celestine said. Then, you'll understand that we'd need to schedule something in advance. I can have someone contact you within 2 to 3 business days. My father died on Sunday, Celestine said. The sentence was quiet and level, and it landed in the air between them, like something heavy being set on a table. Diane blinked. I'm sorry to hear that, she said. And to her credit, she sounded like she might have actually meant it, for a half second. He left a letter, Celestine said, with his attorney, Hartley Reese, to be delivered in person to the general manager of the Aldermere Grand within 72 hours of his death. That letter is in this envelope. I am his daughter and his sole executor. I have a legal obligation to deliver it, and this is the place I was told to bring it. So, here I am. Diane looked at the envelope. The man in the security blazer had not said anything, but he had also not stepped back. Surely something like that could be handled through our legal. The letter specifies in person, Celestine said, to the general manager. Not to guest relations, not to a courier, not to an administrative assistant. She paused. If Mr. Fetz is unavailable, perhaps you could provide me with the contact information for the Aldermere Group's ownership office, and I can inquire there. She said the Aldermere Group's ownership office in exactly the same tone she might say, the front desk or the elevator, as if it were simply a practical option. As if she had any number of practical options available to her, and this was simply the next one on the list. The man in the security blazer finally spoke. His voice was controlled, but his face was doing things he probably didn't realize. Ma'am, we're going to need to ask you to. Kevin. The voice came from across the lobby. Everyone looked. A man was walking toward them from the direction of the elevator bank. He was in his early 60s, white-haired, in a dark suit with no tie, moving with the measured, unhurried pace of someone who didn't need to hurry, because things waited for him. He was looking directly at Celestine. His name was Gordon Fetz, and something in his expression made it clear that he had been watching this scene for at least a few minutes and had decided he'd seen enough. "Kevin," he said again, and the man in the security blazer stepped back without being told anything else. Gordon crossed the remaining distance and stopped in front of Celestine. He looked at her and then at the envelope, and his expression was complicated in a way that was hard to read. "Ms. Beaumont Okafor," he said, getting every syllable right. "I'm Gordon Fetz. I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm very sorry about this." He gestured loosely at the lobby, at Diane, at all of it, without elaborating. "Please, will you come upstairs?" If you've ever watched the air go out of a room at the exact moment the wrong person realizes they made the wrong call, you know what Diane Coulter's face looked like right now. Celestine stood. She picked up her envelope. She followed Gordon Fetz to the elevator, and the doors closed behind them. Upstairs, the Founders Lounge was everything the rest of the hotel implied. Deep leather chairs, wide windows over the harbor, the kind of quiet that costs money to maintain. A woman brought them tea without being asked. Gordon sat across from Celestine at a table by the window and folded his hands and waited. Celestine opened the envelope. She hadn't read the contents before. Not because she didn't know what was in it. Hartley Reese had walked her through the general shape of it when they met on Monday, the day after her father died, but because her father had asked her not to open it until she was sitting in this room. That was the condition in his letter of instructions. Open it in the room, not before. She had honored that because she had spent her whole life watching him honor his word, and she understood that some things are not conditions, they are ceremonies. She pulled out 3 documents. She read the first page of each, though she already knew what they said. Then she turned them around and slid them across the table to Gordon Fetz. He read in silence. Here's what those documents said. Her father's name was Lionel Beaumont Okafor. He had been born in Halifax 63 years ago, the grandson of a man who had come from Ghana with $17 and a scholarship to Dalhousie that took him 8 years to complete while working nights at a fish processing plant. Lionel had grown up between 2 worlds, the modest house in Dartmouth where his mother kept a garden, and the offices of downtown Halifax, where he spent 20 years becoming one of the most quietly successful commercial real estate investors in Atlantic Canada. He bought things people didn't think were worth buying, in places people had given up on, and he was right more often than he was wrong, and he kept very quiet about it. He had never been a member of the Aldermere Grand's Founders Lounge. He had been offered membership twice and declined both times, for reasons he had kept to himself. What he had been, for 11 years, was one of the 4 ownership partners of the Aldermere Group itself. A 14% stake, acquired quietly through 2 separate holding companies in 2015, increased to 22% in 2019 when one of the other partners needed liquidity, and Lionel was the one with cash available. He had never attended a single board meeting in person. He sent a representative. He preferred it that way. The documents in front of Gordon Fetz transferred that 22% stake to Celestine Beaumont Okafor, effective the date of her father's death. They were signed, witnessed, and legally certified. The cover letter from Hartley Reese's office was on firm letterhead and outlined, in precise legal language, that Celestine was now, as of 4 days ago, the single largest individual shareholder in the company that owned the hotel she was currently sitting in. Gordon Fetz read everything twice. Then he set the documents down. He was quiet for a long moment. "Your father," he said finally, "came in here once, about 8 years ago. I didn't know who he was. He sat at the bar and had a coffee and looked out at the harbor. I remember him because when he left, I thought, that man looks like he knows something the rest of us don't." Celestine looked at him. "He did," she said. Gordon nodded slowly. His expression was something past professional courtesy, something that had the texture of genuine reflection in it. The kind that comes when a person understands that something happened on their watch that they would have prevented if they had known, and that not knowing doesn't make it better. "I owe you an apology," he said, "on behalf of this hotel." "I know," Celestine said. "That's not. It should not have." "I know," she said again. Not unkindly, just clearly. There is a version of this story where Celestine was angry, where she stood up and said everything that was true and undeniable about what had just happened in that lobby, and made sure every person involved understood exactly what they had done and what it meant. That version would have been entirely justified. But Celestine had watched her father move through the world for 51 years, and what she had learned from him. The most important thing, the thing she carried with her, the way some people carry photographs, was that your power is not diminished by the ignorance of the people who can't see it. You don't have to prove it. You just have to know it. And eventually, one way or another, the room catches up. She had the documents. She had the legal standing. She had the harbor outside the window, and the quiet of the lounge, and the tea, and the knowledge that her father had done what he set out to do. She picked up her cup. "I'll need a few days," she said, "before I'm ready to discuss any formal transition of my role. My father's funeral arrangements aren't finalized yet." Gordon nodded immediately. "Of course, whenever you're ready. There's absolutely no. But I would like to leave copies of these documents with you today," she said, "so that there's no confusion going forward about who I am or why I'm here when I come back." "Understood," Gordon said. "And I'd like those copies to be distributed to your management team." She paused. "Including your guest relations manager?" Gordon looked at her. He understood what she was saying and what she was not saying, and he nodded again. And this time there was nothing in his nod except for the clean, straightforward acknowledgement of a person who had just been shown exactly where they stood. Celestine finished her tea. Downstairs, when the elevator opened, the lobby was the same as she had left it. The chandelier, the marble, the gold light on the floor. Brendan at the front desk, who looked up when she walked out and then looked away. Diane Coulter was not visible. Celestine buttoned her coat, tucked the original documents back under her arm, and walked to the revolving doors. She stood for a moment outside, at the top of the front steps, looking at the harbor. The November air was cold and damp, and smelled like the sea. She had grown up with that smell. Her father had grown up with it. His grandfather had arrived on a boat into a harbor that looked exactly like this one, and had walked into a city that wasn't sure what to do with him, and had quietly, over the course of a lifetime, built something that outlasted every assumption anyone had ever made about him. The envelope was empty now. The documents were where they were supposed to be. She walked down the steps toward her car, and the city was exactly as it had always been. The same streets, the same sky, the same cold November light. And she was exactly who she had always been, and that, she thought, was the whole point. Her father had known. She knew now too. If this story moved something in you, the kind of quiet that comes when dignity wins without raising its voice, then you already understand why we tell stories like this one. Leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe that what a person carries matters more than how they look when they're carrying it, share this with someone who needs to hear it today.